Are you a business owner or entrepreneur who's had great success in the business world, and now you want to launch a speaking career to share your message with the world? If that's you, then listen up. 25-year speaking industry veteran Brett Ridgway has released his latest special report, 3 key things entrepreneurs must master to build a profitable speaking business. To pick up your copy, go to brettridgway.com/freebie. Welcome to the Spotlight on Speaking show with Brett Ridgway, where you'll learn the keys to building a profitable speaking business from speaking industry pros. Each week, we interview a great guest who will share his or her speaking journey, identify what their keys to success have been, and highlight some critical mistakes they've made along the way that you'll want to avoid. Be sure to visit our website at spotlightonspeaking.com. And while you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, sit back, tune in, and get ready to meet this week's guest.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Spotlight on Speaking show with Brett Ridgway. I'm your host, and I'm excited to have as my guest today, Deepak Saini. Deepak guides people to healthy aging. Having spent many stressed years in the corporate world and overcoming an autoimmune condition, a back injury, and a lifelong battle with obesity, Deepak brings a unique perspective to working with his clients. While not spending time with his family, Deepak is researching and staying at the forefront of emerging and cutting-edge health research. Deepak is a speaker, a writer, a podcast host, a summit host, and actively working on becoming a centenarian, which means living to 100 years old. Deepak, welcome to the Spotlight on Speaking show.
Thank you for having me, Brett. I appreciate it. And I finally got on. It took me a while, but I finally got on the show. So I appreciate it, my friend.
Well, so happy to hear, and I was honored to be a guest on your fairly new podcast, which you're getting up there into a few dozen episodes already. If I
We
remember.
at the time of this of recording, we just released episode 19 this morning. So and we got another 20 in the bag already, ready to be released. So.
All right, cool. Yeah, I was way ahead of the game for a while on this particular podcast, but that backlog evaporated, and so I'm actually returning to a once a week release rather than a twice a week release, probably. But be that as it may, we're here to talk about you and your speaking journey and what tips you can share with aspiring speakers to help them further their career. So, give us the backstory a little bit, if you would, Deepak. So we talked in the intro about having been in the corporate world, etc. So when did you come into speaking in the first place? What was the impetus? What was the subject matter that you spoke about? And why did you decide that needed to be part of your marketing pillars, so to speak?
Yeah, how far back should I go? I always enjoyed, so not to get too much of my backstory, but I struggled with my weight, self-confidence, that type of thing when I was younger. But I always, even doing school presentations, like I always actually liked doing those, even though I was super self-conscious about what I was wearing and people looking at me and all this, again, because I was, very, very heavy and morbidly obese at one point. But I always enjoyed doing that. And then when we got into university, I was in the business program. I'm a CPA by first profession. A lot of presentations required there. And again, I always enjoyed that as well, and being kind of at the front of the stage, so to speak. In that case, the front of the classroom. And then even when I got in the corporate world, I liked having to do presentations to management, or I never had the opportunity to go right to the board, but certainly to management and that sort of thing. And then around that kind of mid-career as well, certain organizations asked me to speak. Again, I'm a CPA, so the local CPA chapter asked me to speak to new CPAs and that sort of thing, and I always kind of welcomed those type of things. I coached youth sports when I was younger, so it's not speaking per se, but getting up in front and of the team and rallying them, before pregame, and at halftime we're down, like, hey, it's 0-0, like we're still in this, all that whole thing. That always came pretty naturally to me, and trying to find some inkling to use as inspiration. And then, again, without going too far back into my backstory, overcoming my own health issues, which brought me, to helping others on their health journey and becoming a coach. Again, I'm always talking to people, whether it be one-on-one, and then I just got more into really what I think we're, what we're talking about here is like really speaking, getting on stages, getting in present, virtual or in person, that type of thing. Again, I really enjoy it, and something I'm really trying to lean into here, as we go forward and get on more stages and speak to more people and get my message out there. And of course, I've done lots of podcasts like this one, and I've been a you know, guest on summits and all sorts of things. Of course, hosting my own summit, hosting my own podcast as well. So yeah, it's a great way. So I have a long track record to answer your question of wanting to speak and being comfortable with speaking. And that doesn't mean I still don't get nervous. I still get nervous every time. But yeah, and actually just ironically enough here, just about 6 weeks ago, I had the first opportunity to do it in person, post COVID in person, corporate speaking event. And yeah, there was some jitters there. There was a little bit of fumbling over the words. It's a little bit different than sitting here behind, I sitting in your office doing a Zoom. But yeah, I love public speaking. I love just getting out there and interacting with people, and actually like Q&A. Honestly, I don't know if there's a question that was upcoming, Brett, but yeah, it's one thing to do the kind of the formal thing and like this is my talk, this is my presentation, but I really love the interaction, the unpredictability of the Q&A afterwards, and that's actually I think where I really shine is just coming up with things on the top of my head. So
All right, I want to dive into that Q&A a little bit more later, okay? Because I think that's an important subject for speakers. But how many years are we going back, Deepak, that you decided to leave the corporate world and do your own thing?
yeah, so I started my business in 2017, and now it is what we now call a side hustle. That wasn't a term that people used back then, doing it part-time. But I left the corporate world for good in 2018. So I've been, being a professional coach. What is that, going on six years now or so, thereabouts. So yeah, it's been a journey, like most entrepreneurs know. But I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't go back. That's for sure.
All right, so you've done virtual, you've now done some in person or whatever. Which do you prefer?
I actually, there's pluses or minuses. Obviously, it's very easy to meet with people all over the world doing this, and I've been part of international events and that sort of thing. And even locally, it's kind of like, oh, I got to drive there, and like I live outside a major city, so I always got to drive anywhere to do anything. Uh, so there's pluses and minuses, but there is something with being live with people and getting that, that whole reaction and that little bit of, you say something and, that feeling you get. I mean, you can sort of tell, visually on a Zoom of people's reaction and that sort of thing. But, when you're in person, you just get much more of that. And the little chatter and the little bit of noise when you drop a nugget that people in the back of the room are like, oh, did he really say that? That sort of thing. So I think I do actually enjoy in person.
Now, how do you measure whether a speech has been successful, has had the impact that you want to have going into a talk?
That's a great question. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I don't think if I judge myself, I don't think there's ever been a presentation or speech where I was like, oh, I nailed it. I'm always like, ah, I messed up there. I could have done better, that sort of thing. But to answer your question, I think it, excuse me, really comes to how engaging the audience is afterwards with the Q&A specifically, which I know we'll talk more about, and then the follow-up. Are people lingering around afterwards? This is going pre-COVID. I remember I did a corporate event, and it was actually one of my first ones. And I had so many people lingering, wanting to ask questions afterwards. At one point, the organizer had to say, "We actually have this room booked for something else. Like you have to leave now." Because I was there for like, I don't know, 45 minutes afterwards, asking or answering questions for people. So I think it's that type of thing that really shows that if success, or maybe not so much from client acquisition or anything like that, but like that people really got it and they really got something out of what I was talking about.
Now, we all know as a speaker, one of the keys to success is truly addressing the pain points of your audience. So, what do you do going into an event to determine if your message is the proper fit, and are you going to tweak that message in any way based on the group that you're speaking to?
Absolutely. And, that's very timely. I'm doing a speech tomorrow for a very specific audience, and they have a very specific theme of their. It's kind of a whole day workshop, and I'm just coming in as one guest speaker. So basically, my basic message, but I tweaked it a little bit for their theme and their topic, and I changed some words to specifically speak the language that is part of their overall theme. So, I know people watch this whenever, but we're kind of here at the beginning of the new year. So it's all about priorities, setting their year for an intention is what their whole theme is. So those are kind of the language that I'm using in my speech. So, 80% the same content, 90% the same content, and tweak it a little bit. So, always.
All right, so let's dive into the Q&A area a little bit more now, which isn't something that as I recall, has been talked about a lot on this particular show. So, one of the things that I always caution new speakers about, Deepak, is you got to control your speaking environment as much as possible. And when you give up control of the microphone for whatever reason, whether it's going to get testimonials from the audience or in this case Q&A from the audience, you are in essence giving up control of the microphone. So you're kind of going out on a limb there or whatever. So why do you do Q&A, and has it ever bit you in the butt, so to speak?
That's a good question. So two questions there. So well, like I mentioned earlier, there's only so much content I can give, and I don't want to necessarily, I guess it depends on the engagement, but I'm not necessarily teaching. I'm trying to inspire people to make change in particular around their health. So I'm not giving everything away. I don't want it to be too dry. I'm hitting the hard points, and sometimes I purposely leave things out. Even if I go back to what I was saying earlier with doing presentations in university and stuff, we would sometimes purposely leave out something knowing that would be an easy volleyball, softball question that people would ask so that you could hit it out of the park, type of thing. So I don't necessarily do that so much now in that regard, but I'm purposely, you know, leaving the audience wanting more so that they want to ask questions. And again, I feel very comfortable. I know my topics very well, and I think pretty good on my feet. At least I think I think so. So I really enjoy the Q&A, and quite often, even when I'm talking with organizers, they have let's say an hour slot or a 45-minute slot. Again, I kind of prefer the Q&A. I'd actually try and negotiate or make sure it's okay with the organizer. I go a bit shorter on the content and increase the Q&A period, because I think I really shine there. Now, to your second part of your question, has ever bit me in the butt? Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if it's necessarily sort of a negative when somebody asks a very specific, detailed, they're looking for a very detailed answer to some very specific question where it's like, either A, it's out of my element, or I'm not qualified to answer that. And of course I answer accordingly. I really think you should, talk to, someone who's specialized in that. That's not what I do. And, so I don't think that's biting me in the butt, but I'm not really answering their question. I'm deferring. I don't think I've ever really been sort of dumbfounded, so to speak, where it's really been super negative. Sometimes I really have to think about a question, or I answer it, and and again, I'm my own harshest critic. So sometimes, after the event, I was like, oh, I should have told them this as well. But I think I've always give them something that they can walk away with.
Well, obviously, the fear of many speakers is if they go to Q&A and they get asked a question that they don't know the answer to, they're afraid they're going to look like a fool and then, lose that rapport with the audience or whatever. So, but I can certainly see your perspective, Deepak, and the fact that you are willing to engage with the audience and answer questions can be a strong point in your favor. It's just a matter of making sure you're prepared and, like you said yourself, knowing your own subject inside and out, and you're pretty well going to be able to hammer back anything that they bring at you. So, all right. So I got some other questions I definitely want to ask you,
Yeah,
Deepak.
Brett, can I just piggyback on what you said there? I just
Sure.
want to maybe completely answer more. Again, yes, you have to know your subject. I think myself too. Now, whether someone, from that audience eventually becomes a client or not is kind of irrelevant. Obviously, we want that, but I think when somebody asks a question and maybe I'm not quite prepared and I have to dance on my feet a little bit, you're getting the real Deepak, right? So, I kind of want people to really know my personality. But again, if they're going to work with me or start following me, start following my podcast, whatever, I don't want it to be so, not dry is not the word I'm looking for, but so prepared. Because I want
Yeah.
people to see the real Deepak, and how my personality really shines. And sometimes, the greatest, humor and jokes come out during the Q&A, when people are like ask something, I was like, I'll be like, hey, oh, Brett, that's an interesting question. Where are you going with that one? And it kind of the personality comes out. So again, I think that kind of plays to my strong suit. So I just want to, share that as well.
Oh, awesome. So I have some other questions. I want to get to them in just a minute. But before we do, let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor.
Are you a business owner or entrepreneur who's had great success in the business world, and now you want to launch a speaking career to share your message with the world? If that's you, then listen up. 25-year speaking industry veteran Brett Ridgway has released his latest special report, 3 Key Things Entrepreneurs Must Master to Build a Profitable Speaking Business. To pick up your copy, go to brettridgway.com/freebie.
And we are back with the Spotlight on Speaking show. And my guest this episode is Deepak Saini. So, Deepak, if you were going to maybe list 3 top tips for aspiring speakers to get the most out of their speaking engagements, what would those 3 tips be?
Number one, you got to just get out there. You got to practice, right? You got to start on the whatever that is, your local something, your friends and family, and just get comfortable. So you got to get out there. I think too many people have this, at least people that are maybe starting out or in the first couple years of their career, they have these grandiose ideas of I want to have like a Tony Robbins type of stage, or in front of thousands of people. Like that's not going to happen if you don't start practicing and hone the confidence to be on stage. So I guess that's number one. It's like you got to start somewhere and have the confidence. Number two is you got to really know your idea, and you're going to have your Brett, I have one of your books, and you got to have your signature speech, and you got to have your back pocket secondary speech, and a handful of topics that you can talk on, but you got to really know them. And again, for everyone to teach their own. But again, I feel comfortable that if somebody throws me a relatively, curveball, in the same ballpark type of thing, I can answer that. So kind of, I guess, knowing your stuff. And then I guess third is, you got to play in the sandbox where you're going to get opportunities. So whether that's joining certain groups, networking with other speakers, going to events, that type of thing, just sitting at home is not going to get you a speaking career, right? You got to get out there. So yeah, I'd say those would be my top 3. And I wasn't
All right.
expecting that question. There's probably other things I have as well, but that's what came to mind.
Sure.
So.
All right. So let's piggyback on number 3, and that's the whole networking thing. So, what's your advice for people about keys to being successful at networking? Because I always tell people the most important asset you have as a business person are the relationships that you have. So, what do you do to leverage relationships and make networking truly valuable to you?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Well, I think there's a couple different ways to look at networking, and I'll put it on the speaker slant because that's our topic today. Is so as an example, I decided I wanted to run a summit, which you mentioned. So I invited a whole bunch of other speakers and experts in their field. And part of that discussion is like, hey, where are you speaking at? You know, is there an introduction you can make to me in some of the places you're speaking in, and that sort of thing. There's lots of different groups, and some of them have subgroups that are specific for speakers. Join those groups, go to these networking events. And then the other thing, and not necessarily speaking per se, but depending on what your marketing efforts are, or how you do business development. I'm doing networking in different groups as well from a business development point of view. But once I know someone's a speaker, or they know of a stage, then then I'm changing the conversation, or I'm adding to that conversation. So I'm doing networking for one purpose, but if I hear something regarding to speaking, I'm going to follow up with that person, or bring it up. So there's plenty of avenues, especially the with online and the technology now. Like we can literally speak any language we speak, we can basically be in front of an audience that speaks that language.
All right. So, now my usual favorite question, and that's all right. Time to get red faced for a minute and share an embarrassing moment in your speaking career that was uncomfortable at the time, but a valuable lesson was learned, and it would be something that you would highly advise aspiring speakers not to do.
Oh, okay, that's a good one. I don't know if it was really super embarrassing. It was. I kind of laughed it off and sort of made of a joke of it. Maybe looked somewhat comical or maybe somewhat unprofessional. So I mentioned that this one I did recently, sort of the first in-person post-COVID corporate event, and it was sort of in the central business district. And my wife's office, who has a corporate job, was just a couple blocks away. So I actually asked her to come if she could come and record. So I had a little bit of a speaker reel and type of thing. So this is the kind of the funny part is, so my little intro piece of like a little bit about me, and here's a picture of my family, that kind of thing. I act with my wife and audience. I actually got how many years we were married wrong. I hadn't updated that slide. So she jokingly, and people know, I kind of had to introduce her so people know who this person who's not part of their company sitting there is. And she kind of on cue chimed up. She's like, actually, it's and she added 2 extra years. Like, I was like, I said 16 years, and she said, no, it's actually 18. I was like, oh, I guess I need to update the slide. And so again, she was being playful. I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting to have my details wrong. And again, we kind of joked it off, but it was a little bit of a monkey wrench. But again, I think pretty good on my feet. So just like, oh, I kind of sloughed it off and just moved on. So that's one that
All right, so let's
recently.
let's slide over to your sweet spot, which is healthy living, healthy aging. And obviously, as COVID hopefully gets further and further into our distant past and more live events are going on, all that, speakers are going to be out there traveling again and all that. So give us a couple, three tips for speakers to maintain their health while traveling on the road as best as possible.
Oh, great question. Great question. I think number one is, so especially around traveling, are flights and when you need to get there. So, I think prioritize sleep. Again, if you're traveling time zone, I'm going to go very high level here. If you're traveling multiple time zones, try and adjust your sleep to where you're going, especially if you're, traveling off continent, that sort of thing, or even just a couple time zones from West Coast to East Coast, vice versa. Try and adjust your sleep and make sure you get sleep. I was recently back in, a few months ago at an event in Las Vegas, and as attending an event, I wasn't speaking at it, but hey, you're in Vegas, so you're gonna do stuff after the conference is over. So but you still got to get your sleep. So maintain your sleep, number one. Number two, I'd say, is try and get whatever nutrition looks like for you. And I'm not going to get into a nutrition lesson here, but try and maintain as best as possible. One tip I do is typically when you're traveling or going to conferences or events, if there's one area that's usually lacking on the menu, it's usually vegetables. So I always travel with a greens powder that I can just put a scoop in a cup of water or a glass of water in the hotel room or whatever, water bottle, shake it up. At least I'm not getting the fiber and all that, but at least I'm getting the micronutrients of 10 to 20 servings of vegetables to just sort of keep me going. So that's tip number two. And then I guess number three is, is try and stay in your routine as best as possible. And I guess these all kind of go hand in hand. So again, if I'm going somewhere, like as best as I can control it, does the hotel have a gym? Or if not, like, when do I need to be on stage, or when does the conference start? Can I go for a run and do my normal routine so I'm set for the day, all the things I would normally do at home. So I think those would be my top three tips.
All right, very good. So I appreciate you sharing that, Deepak. Now I'd like to give you a couple minutes to tell people a little bit more about what all it is that you do, how they can get involved in your world if they so choose, and what all you got going on.
Yeah, and I have something new too, so I'll save that for the end. So yeah, so again, I'm all about health and wellness, and particularly healthy aging, and trying to change people's perception of aging. And many people have seen what maybe their parents or their grandparents went through and struggled with the last health challenges for the last 5, 10, 15, even 20 or more years with their health. And I'm trying to get people to realize that doesn't need to be your destiny. You don't need to go through the same experience, and to start now with healthy aging. And I have I have a group coaching program, I have one-on-one coaching, et cetera. And I have a free guide that people can download to start building some healthy habits, and I'm sure we'll have that link there with the show notes. So I encourage people to download that guide, find something that resonates with you, track it for 30 days, and then pick another one and start to build some healthy habits for yourself. So again, I've been doing that for many, many years. The thing I'd like to share, if I can with your audience, something new, is one thing I have found. Again, I've been doing this for a while now. Is there's many coaches, particularly in the health and wellness, who struggle. They go get certifications of many sorts, and not many of these schools or programs, some do, but not many actually teach you actually how to run your business. So again, I've made many mistakes in the first couple of years of, hey, I'm still making mistakes, but in the first couple of years in particular. So I'm actually starting a program for newer coaches to learn from Deepak. Don't make the dumb mistakes that I made in the first couple of years. Save yourself some time and some money. So that's a new program I'm starting as well. So I don't have a landing page or anything for that yet, but just follow up with me on the social media or download my guide for the health and wellness, and you'll kind of join my ecosystem and learn more about that when that comes out.
All right, super. Well, Deepak, I want to thank you so much for being my guest today on the Spotlight on Speaking show. I wish you the greatest of success this year. May this be your greatest year yet. And for everybody listening out there, if you haven't been over to brettridgway.com, by all means, get it over there, get the free report, 3 key things entrepreneurs must master to build a profitable speaking business. And as always, to all of you out there, I wish you the greatest of success in everything that you do. And may this year be your greatest year yet. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Brett. Bye.
This has been the Spotlight on Speaking show with Brett Ridgway. Be sure to join us every week as we interview speaking industry pros and have them share their best tips for building a profitable speaking business. Until next week, thank you for tuning in, and remember to visit our website at spotlightonspeaking.com so you can enjoy even more great episodes like this one. While you're here, be sure to subscribe via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Spotlight on Speaking show. Until then, our sincere best wishes to you for the greatest of success as you work to build your own profitable speaking business.